Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Between the Shadows, the very, very first show. We're really excited to be here, and we just want to say thank you for joining us, Dark Shadows fans, young and old. My name is Kristen.
My name is Kara.
And Dark Shadows, you know what? It's difficult to even know where to start, honestly. I mean, I think we've just recently said this has been 30 years in the making, you know?
Yep.
And I just like to open this very first one by saying that Dark Shadows has been a large part of my life, and I'm sure Kara's life too, since our dad first introduced it to us when we were just little kids, like small kids.
I mean, I don't think I could put a certain age on when I started watching it. I mean, we've been watching it literally our entire lives.
Yeah, I think my earliest memory, Dark Shadows, was there. You know, back to, I don't even know what year it was because, it's been there for so long. Dad sitting on that couch in that tiny little house. And it was definitely, it was before all of the moving started, our first move that I can remember. But he sat on the couch with his, his big old tall bookcase for VHSs back then, pulling them out of the bookcase and just getting scared out of my mind seeing that cover with Barnabas Collins on the front with his big old teeth and his nasty cane, and I think we dubbed him Sharp Teeth. And, Sharp Teeth used to scare the crap out of me. Dad, please, I don't want to watch Sharp Teeth.
Mm-hmm. I remember laying in bed at night after going to bed. They put us to bed and hearing the theme song just playing in the dark while we're laying in our room trying to go to sleep. I just remember hearing the theme song and trying to stay awake to hear what they're talking about in the show.
Oh, man. Even then I was curious. I'm like... And in the back of my head, I'm like, I don't know, Dad. Maybe when I'm older. And you know what? When I was older, it did happen because, he was telling us, hey, I just started watching Dark Shadows. And, back in the days of the Netflix DVDs that you got in the mail, and you got, eventually you could get 3 at a time, I think.
Right, yeah, it was like 3.
Up to 3, but that was back when they were just doing the 1 disc at a time thing. It was like the library. You just keep mailing it back and forth. And he was like, I just got the next Dark Shadows disc. You want to come over and watch it? And we were always like, yeah, let's do it,
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really looked forward to that when I was a kid. I was like, we're going to go to a weekend. We're going to get snacks. We're going to probably have this nice dinner because that's what Dad used to do. P.S. Happy birthday, Dad.
Happy birthday, Daddy.
This episode is all for you. You're the whole reason we even like this show. The whole reason we want to sit here and talk about it forever and ever. So, happy birthday, Dad. This one's for you.
We love you very much.
We love you. So, that was when I really started to love Dark Shadows, when I was a teenager. And now that I've done all this research and we've been watching it for so long, and it's literally, once it stops, I have to start it back over from the beginning. I can't just pick it up in one certain place. That's not how I watch Dark Shadows. Start to finish.
Every time.
Every time. And... Because when Dark Shadows was on, it was geared towards teenagers,
Absolutely.
And so now that I know that, and, when I found that out, I'm like, well, that makes sense that at 15 I loved Dark Shadows, and all I could think of was Dark Shadows. Mm-hmm. Couldn't wait to get to my dad's to watch the next Dark Shadows disc that he just got from Netflix.
It's like Dark Shadows was my first taste of the macabre and, like, vampires, stuff like that, werewolves, witches, that was my first taste of what all that was. And since then, I mean, I've always been interested and intrigued, and it started with Dark Shadows.
You know what? And that's what I've said about this show forever. Dark Shadows, if you can get past the campy and the really bad effects and all of these different things, the stories are Dark Shadows. They are the hook. They're what drew me to Collinwood and all the people in it from the very beginning. I'd say, even from that first one, that first weird story they brought on, like before Barnabas, it was Josette's ghost. And
right, yes.
And before then, it was just about Burt Devlin getting his revenge, Vicky Winters finding out who her parents are. Why the heck is David so screwed up?
Right.
And what other secrets is Liz Stoddard holding up in that big old hill on the cliff? Mm-hmm. Those were great stories.
That was intrigue enough.
That was
soap opera material right there.
From itself. That, and Roger, that dude is sketch. I'm sorry. And the more you watch it, you realize, God, Roger's a jerk.
Yeah.
You know, he just, what a dirtbag.
But no wonder about David.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, it's bad enough that this guy, this jerk, who is only out to cover his own butt, you know, not only did David inherit all of that from him, we know nothing about his mother. Not yet.
Yes.
And somehow you get the feeling in the beginning that, you know, that's the reason David is really messed up. I mean, anybody can have a jerk father and grow up to be a wonderful person.
Right.
But...
yeah, it's just all in what is happening, what is going on.
Right. So that was a bunny trail, but worth mentioning, I think.
Yeah.
But those stories from the beginning, before they put anything supernatural in there, that right there was the beginning for me. And then you get Josette's ghost coming out of her portrait, and David's like, she protects me, you know? And from that story all the way to the tail end of the whole series, you know, it's 1897. It's parallel time, and they're in this, you know, they're in Collinwood, and it's a whole different slew of characters. Nobody we've ever seen before.
Right.
And, you know, they're in this house, and it's dark, like darker than Collinwood should be. And you're one, you know, from that, and then you find out that there is this cursed room in the east wing of the house, and everybody from one person from every generation has to spend the night in this room. I mean, these stories, there was such a wide, broad range of stories. You know, it was all weird and mystical and magical, but...
well, and the point where David and with Josette's ghost, that's the moment you find out. And I feel like that's the first moment that things start getting weird and mysterious, and, you know, and that you learn that David is clairvoyant.
Yep.
Talking to ghosts, talking to the dead. He's clairvoyant.
And it doesn't bug him at all.
And that's when, like, watching those beginning episodes before Barnabas, when David has that moment with the portrait and with the ghost.
Yep.
You find out he's clairvoyant. That's when I got chills, and that's where I really got hooked. I was like, oh my God, it's getting weird, it's getting cool. I can't wait. I want to watch more. Yeah,
I mean, every time we talk about it, you know, we'll split ways and go to our separate places, and then I'm like, I need to watch Dark Shadows. Where are my DVDs? You know.
Exactly.
And
I was never more happy for them to put out that box set. It was worth every penny. It always will be.
That would beat the one Netflix DVD a week. You know, it beats it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I've always wanted it to have on hand. Like, whenever I want to watch it, I'm going to watch it. And it's the best thing.
It's true.
But
I think the last time I watched it, start to finish, it took me 6 months, almost to the day, to watch it from start to finish.
Yeah.
But I've stopped counting because it doesn't matter. Because as soon as I finish it, you know, it might get 1 or 2 days on the shelf before I put it back in the DVD player. I think my longest stretch was maybe a month before I watched it again. But usually it's within that first week. I'm like, nope, gotta watch it again. Because after you watch the original, you gotta go to the revival. Because that was a pretty kicking series. I mean, they did really well with that, I think.
It was.
And then, of course, you have the House of Dark Shadows. You have Night of Dark Shadows. And, you know, we're going to watch those too. It's been a large part for a long time. And I'm so happy that we finally sat down and did this. This is, you know, this has been so many years in the making. And
you know, we were talking about, it was the type of show, it was a one and done shoot type of thing, and I love the fact that it was the type of show, and everyone talks about this in all their interviews, that there was no time to go back and reshoot the flood lines. It's like, I love the rawness.
Yeah,
it just makes it more real. It's not perfect, but it's natural.
It's natural. And it's not overproduced.
To me, it's totally believable. It's like talking to somebody in real life. It's not rehearsed. It's, you know.
Well, it's like some shows for me are just, they're real.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Barnabas Collins is real for me, you know?
Yes.
And all these other characters, you know, when I see their picture, I'm like, oh, that's Liz's daughter. That's Barnabas Collins, you know?
Right.
You know, they're real people for me, and you get sucked in like that. And this was one of those shows for me, you know?
Right. And I just take, like, you know, the flubs and seeing all the boom mics and the shots and all that. Like, I just take that as the bloopers that we possibly would have never seen.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that wasn't a thing that they did back then, you know? Yeah. It's just like, here you go. If you screw up, well, there's always tomorrow.
Somebody shooing a fly out of their face or flubbing their line and repeating it. It's bloopers you probably would have never seen.
Or the terrible close-up angles of the girls' noses. Those poor things. They, you know, for back then, I mean, their skin was really great. I mean, I'm glad for them because that would have been so embarrassing with some of even the camera flubs, you know. And
great makeup department.
Yes. Although they did make up the girls pretty, you know, when the time came.
They did.
That's me being a girl. You knew it when you started. Yeah. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, but even, you know, you have the cameras rolling over the cords and, you know, it's a big bonk on the camera and, you know, scenes in the background just slowly falling down or just not working. Doors not opening when they're supposed to. And the actor's standing there jiggling the handle trying to get this door open and...
They're closing doors and things fall down off the wall.
Or you see a stagehand in the background shut that door because it didn't close all the way, you know. I love it all.
Yeah. We would have never gotten that for real. And so...
It's as much a part as Dark Shadows as the storyline, I think. And
it's just one of the many things that makes it memorable.
And there's literally, since then, there's never been anything else like it, you know? I mean, people have tried, you know, and it just doesn't, I don't know, Dark Shadows had something that, you know, that I don't get anymore I haven't gotten it since.
Yeah, nothing makes me feel the way it makes me feel. Yeah. It's crazy.
It's like a bad drug, but this one's a good drug.
Yes. And since we're, like, in the beginning of, like, pre-Barnabas, let's talk about Diana Malay.
Oh, that's a bad idea. I could go on forever about Diana.
Because she was really the beginning of the magical part of the show, and I thought it was so great to enter with that.
I mean, everybody's done ghosts, you know.
Yeah.
A Christmas Carol. The dude saw 4 ghosts in one night.
Yeah.
Everybody does ghosts.
Everybody sees ghosts.
Laura Collins was the first, like, holy crap, what is going on?
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And Diana Malay, God rest her soul. I think she died earlier or late last year, I think.
Yeah.
And she was fantastic as Laura Collins. And I love that they gave her a job when she was so many months pregnant, and they did a really good job of hiding it.
And she's like, I'm not going to audition. I just want to have the job.
Yeah.
If you don't like me, then I'll walk. That's cool.
Yeah.
But I love that they just took a chance, gave it to her. She nailed it.
There was an interview that she was talking about when she walked into Bob Costello's office. Mm-hmm. And he gave her the soliloquy about the Phoenix that she told David to read.
Yes.
And she asked him, she read it over, and she said her jaw hit the ground, and she looked up at him and said, "Can I read this to you?" And he was like, "You got the part." He's like, "You got the part." And she responded, "Well, thank heaven, because this is me. I am a Phoenix."
Right.
And she says that she was Laura Collins. Like, Laura Collins was Diana Malay.
Yes.
And she says it was an easy part for her because she said that she believed every minute that she was the Phoenix, and it helped her make it believable for us, you know?
Yes.
And one thing that she said that I loved so much, that yes, Laura Collins, she was a Phoenix. Yes, she was metaphysical. She was a myth and being human, but primarily she was a mom.
Yeah.
I truly believe that the storyline that Laura Collins did in fact love her son. I really think that. And
definitely.
She said that Laura Collins wasn't evil and that there are many sides to the Phoenix. She could create miracles, and they weren't all wonderful miracles.
Right.
But miracles, you know, just the same. And
right.
But she says, but neither are humans. Humans aren't wonderful either. But she tried to be a good and wonderful mom.
Yeah.
And Diana Malay says, well, that's what we're all trying to do. We're all just trying to be good humans and raise good humans, you know? And
considering the fact that, yes, she was trying to pull David into the fire and technically kill her kid. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was all out of love. I mean, that's a mother's love.
Yeah.
I think.
I don't think
they'll go to the ends of the earth, and
that was the only way she could be with David forever, is if he would become a phoenix too.
All because she loved her child. She just wanted to be with her child forever.
Yeah.
This was her not by choice, and she just wanted her child.
Yeah. And
she couldn't live another 100 years without her kid.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
and
as crazy as it sounds.
I mean, what a way to really introduce the supernatural on a show. I mean, just that story alone made me cry a little because, you know, you almost wanted David to go into the fire to be with his mom.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, of course David's got to live. That's horrible. It's a horrible way to die.
Yes.
You know, but then you see Lauren, all she wants is that baby to run into her arms, you know?
Yeah.
And
speaking of David, I have to give it up for David because to not have much of a catalog before Dark Shadows and after Dark Shadows, he did pretty amazing as a child actor.
Oh, man.
I think he was pretty amazing. I mean, holding his own up against the actors he was on that show with. And honestly, he's one that rarely flubbed his lines.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
David had... Yeah.
I was so impressed. I was so impressed. And I'm a little sad that we never got more from him.
Yeah. I mean, and there were so many facets of David.
Yes.
You know?
He did so well changing his characters up and not getting confused and getting names flubbed up between the time periods he was bouncing between.
There were so many times that the adults called Daniel David and they called Jameson David and David was Jameson. And it was like, wait a minute, and which time are we in?
but it didn't mess him up.
Yeah, it didn't mess him up. He was right on the money.
And I was so impressed with that kid.
He started out by being this... I was afraid of this kid. Mm-hmm. I think if I had been hired to be his governess, you know, or as a teacher, if he was in one of my classes, I cannot guarantee that kid's safety. I mean, if he had done half the stuff he did to Vicky, to me, I just don't.
And that's probably a big reason why he was homeschooled. Like he wasn't in boarding school or anything.
Well, they mentioned that he was kicked out of school.
Yeah.
But in the original series, we never find out why.
But we can only imagine its behavior.
And in the revival series, I don't know how true this is to the original story, but in the revival series, they find out that David can't go back to regular school in Collinsport because he set fire to the school and he can never go back.
Okay.
So, and with the Laura being the Phoenix thing, it kind of fits.
That totally fits.
So that was totally viable.
See, it's these things that they don't put in the show that are in the original storylines that, man, they so fit and they could have kept them.
Yeah, but I mean, I think Dan Curtis working on both had a lot to do with that.
I mean, Dan Curtis, he proved you could make your literal dreams come true. I mean, Dark Shadows all began with a dream of Dan's, and that's just...
It's true. I mean, he had a dream. I think the story goes, he had a dream about a girl who was riding on a train, and she had been hired to be a governess. And that right there, just off that dream, was the first episode, because literally before that, the whole first episode, Vicky's trying to get to Collinwood.
Right.
She's trying to get to Collinwood. You know, she has to stop at the friggin' hotel bar because there ain't nobody there to give her a ride. Now, in later, I mean, in this particular, the original series, she's waiting on the cab driver. Cab driver's got a flat tire. And in other interpretations of it, it's Willie who's supposed to go get her.
Okay, yeah.
And, you know, but in the original, she's waiting on the cab driver. Cab driver have a flat tire. But this whole first episode, she's trying to get to Collinwood. And then right as those credits roll, right at the end of the first episode, she walks in the doors of Collinwood. And Elizabeth Stoddard closes the doors behind her. And that's it. That's the first episode.
That's it, yep.
And... even that first episode was intriguing. It just was. And it's like, okay. Like, my minimum, when I watch new shows that I haven't ever seen, I usually try to do, like, a 3-episode minimum, you know?
Right,
and
yeah.
If you still got me hooked after the 3rd episode, I'm going to keep watching, you know? And, so, yeah.
Yeah, you got to get introduced to everybody and get the feel of what the show's actually about and what's everybody's story, and that takes a few episodes.
Yeah, you can't just base it on one episode. But based on that first Dark Shadows episode, I was not hesitant about going to the second episode. I just wasn't.
Yes.
You're like, well, what's going on? Now I'm intrigued, you know? And, you know, originally it wasn't going to be called Dark Shadows. It was going to be called Shadows on the Wall. That was the original story Bible that Art Wallace wrote for Dan based off this dream.
Yes.
And I think other titles were Castle of Darkness or The House on Widow's Hill, Terror at Collinwood. When they pitched it to ABC, it was actually called The House on Storm Cliff.
Right.
But they changed it to Dark Shadows, which, by the way, Dark Shadows works. It works better than anything else.
Yeah, and Dan was even saying in the documentary, the Amazon documentary, the
Master of Dark Shadows, watch it.
Yes.
It's got commercials, it's worth it.
He was saying that, you know, they pitched him the Shadows on the Wall title, and he's like, oh, I just didn't like that. He's like, something like Dark Shadows, you know. He's like, you know, there's light shadows, there's dark shadows.
Yeah,
he's
somebody tried to argue, well, all shadows are dark. He was like, no, not really.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So he actually came up with Dark Shadows himself.
Yeah, I mean,
the creator.
What a feat, you know? That is one man I would love to have on this show, but God rest him.
Yes.
You know, he pitched it to ABC. He wanted to do it at night. It's a nighttime gothic soap, and they're like, well, we needed our afternoon slots. He was like,
well, we got 3:30 available in the afternoon. How about that?
He was like, this is not a soap opera, you know? And a lot of the actors that you talk to, or that interview, excuse me, I've never met any of them. I'm hoping to change that. But a lot of the actors have said it didn't feel like they were in a soap opera. It seemed more like an anthology series.
Right.
And I think Catherine Lee Scott, I think, said that, and that was right on the money. It was an anthology series.
Completely, because with all the different things they did, like, you know, they did the vampire, they did the werewolf, they did Frankenstein, they did the Bride of Frankenstein, and Jekyll and Hyde, and whoever else you can name off.
Picture of Dorian Gray?
Yes.
Turn of the Screw?
Yes, anthology series was a very good way to put it. And to look at it, if you didn't want to call it a soap opera, I don't watch a soap opera, but
they really did.
Great anthology series.
Whoever they were basing these stories off of, man, they really went for Edgar Allan Poe. There was so many from Edgar Allan Poe that they kind of inspired the story on, and which was great. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe, man, he was...
And Poe is my favorite.
He's great.
So, I mean, again, Dark Shadows was the beginning of my first taste of the weird and the macabre, and that led into me to Edgar Allan Poe. He's my favorite, so it's...
I mean, don't get me wrong. Some of the writing did feel a little bit soap opera-ish. You know, the marriage trouble, and Liz is waiting on Widow's Hill for her husband. You know, and
everybody's with everybody, switching partners. You know,
but
Carolyn's with Joe, and then he's with Maggie.
Yeah, and then he's
with Angelique because he got bit. You know, stuff like that. You know,
yes, so
typical soap opera material.
Definitely. But the overall story and the characters, they really didn't feel that way to me. They felt like real people, you know, who have never heard of anything that's happening to them. Nobody's heard of ghosts and vampires, and nobody's read Bram Stoker, you know, and it's just...
And I can't remember, it might have been David Selby, it might have been Laura Parker that said it, but, you know, these characters are so eccentric.
They really are.
And you had to be just as eccentric to play them, and they were.
Yes.
And that's why, God, they pulled it off.
They really did. And they used so many, like, stage actors because, you know, you get the movie actors are very refined and very, very perfect.
Yes.
But you get these Shakespearean, you get Jonathan Frid, who is a Shakespearean actor. And
you have Joan Bennett.
Yeah. All of these people who could perform in front of people, you know? And that, I think, was the eccentricity that, you know, that just made the show so great. You know, because the characters were eccentric, like, you know, and they got very eccentric but wonderful people to play them. Yes. Like, every person played their part so well, that person was who they were playing.
They became them, like, in front of the camera, and they sold it.
And, man, Dan Curtis and Bob Costello really knew how to hook people and get them out, you know, pick these perfect people. Yeah. Now, I guess when Dark Shadows was going to be dropped, the show had about 8 weeks left. And this was on an interview with Malcolm Marmorstein, I think is how, I apologize, dude, if I'm saying it wrong. But they had 8 weeks left, and he was the one who came up with the idea of the Phoenix. Like, he had to explain it to Dan Curtis.
Yeah.
This is what a Phoenix is. And because of this storyline, they were renewed for another 13 weeks, I think is what they said.
It was actually, when Laura came into the story, they had 4 weeks left of those 13 weeks left.
Oh, okay.
So that's when Laura came in. They had 4 weeks left to go.
Okay.
Of that last 13 weeks they gave them.
That was even shorter. I mean, they
So
came
had
up
a
with
month.
they came up with this, and they got Laura, the storyline of Laura did kind of pick up a little, because I noticed that when I was watching. I'm just at the tail end of Laura the Phoenix in my rotation of Dark Shadows right now.
Yes.
And God, I a lot of the time, or I guess this time, I paid more attention to Laura and her story. And oh my God, I'm so conflicted when I watch it. It's like, you can't kill your kid. It was crazy. But then you wanted her to be a wonderful mom to David. You wanted David to be with his mom. And they did that in 4 weeks. And they were renewed after that. And Dan Curtis was like, okay, well, what's the next thing? What do we do after that? We gotta keep this going. We got 13 more weeks, And he suggested, Malcolm, the writer, suggested getting this tall blonde guy to play a vampire on Dark Shadows, because they didn't want to make him look like a regular vampire would look, like Bela Lugosi and Dracula.
Yeah.
But so they wanted this bleach blonde babe from California to play Barnabas Collins, and
a hunk.
And then a hunk. And then Jonathan Frid walks in, and this is the guy that they've hired, and he's not a blonde. I mean, he is quite tall, but he's not blonde, and he's not the California beach babe. But holy crap, I loved him as Barnabas. He was Barnabas Collins.
Yes.
He oh man,
he was proper. He was refined. He was polite. I mean,
and
charming. Yes, charming. And
Barnabas Collins could charm a snail. I'm only saying. I mean, the charm in this man, I think his charm carried him and got him out of so many situations.
Definitely. And talking about Laura, when they had, 4 of those weeks left to go, after the Laura saga, that's when they got the additional 13 weeks, and that's when we got Barnabas.
Yeah, and, Jonathan Frid said he wasn't convinced that, he didn't think he was going to stay on after those 13 weeks,
Exactly.
He was like, well, it's a short job, let's do it,
Yes.
And
it's funny, I just, on the documentary, I just heard them talking about that Dan had come to Jonathan with a stack of papers, and he's like, he's sitting there thinking, I'm getting canned, this is it.
Here the pink slips, yeah.
The 13 weeks are over, and he's like, no, this is a stack of fan letters for you.
Yeah.
And they just decided to keep him. They couldn't get rid of him.
How could you, though? I'm not sure I understand why these teenage girls, boys and girls, not just girls,
yes,
could not let Barnabas go, after 13 weeks. I mean, at first you're like, is he going to get his? He's so mean, and then you just love him, It's like, oh God, I hope Barnabas doesn't get staked tonight,
Right. And I mean, you're expecting, you're expecting the typical vampire that has no remorse. He is who he is.
Right.
But it just, if I'm wrong, I mean, this is just how I see it, but just the way Jonathan himself portrayed this character.
Yeah.
He just ended up having that sense of reluctancy.
Yeah.
And I think Jonathan had a lot to do with that, just the way he portrayed him.
Yeah.
That he just ended up becoming that kind of vampire.
Right. And he said that he and Barnabas, the character, kind of grew together. Like, in the beginning, Barnabas is he's a vampire. He's been in this coffin for almost 200 years, and he's coming into this world that he knows nothing about.
Yes.
So he comes up out of that coffin. He's awkward. He's from the 1700s. And then you have Jonathan, who comes on the screen, and he's a little bit awkward himself. So right. Barnabas and Jonathan grew together as the show progressed.
Yeah.
Each of them eventually got more comfortable with the family. He got more comfortable playing Barnabas, and he just...
He found his niche.
He really did.
With the character and what he wanted to do with him.
Jonathan Frid was Barnabas Collins. There have been several who did a great job as Barnabas, but...
Yes.
But
he was the first, he was the original, and there's never going to be anything like the original, no matter what it is. Dark Shadows, Star Wars, whatever you want.
Yep.
There's nothing like the original that it's so capturing and so timeless and so original.
I absolutely agree. And it's so funny to see the way things played out in this show. Like in the beginning, when Art Wallace was writing this story Bible for the show, I've gotten my hands on a few excerpts from it. I can't find the book itself. It's completely out of print. Nobody has it. If you do find a copy, it is not on the cheap side. Unless by some miracle you run into your local thrift store and there it is on the bookcase for 90 cents and it's 50% off day. But yeah, I mean this story Bible was pretty rare and pretty informative. There was a lot of things that were different in the story Bible that wasn't in the show. A few storylines had changed. There's Carolyn Stoddard, Liz's daughter, was dating Joe Haskell. Somebody who worked for the Collinses.
Yeah. And he worked on the docks for them. Right?
Yeah, he worked on the boats, and then eventually got a promotion because Liz wanted him to marry her daughter. And
Bill Malloy was his boss.
Malloy was his boss. You know what? Bill Malloy is another story.
That
for
is a whole
another
other story. Yes.
But yeah, so she wanted. They're dating, and eventually, they part ways. They soap opera breakup. I'm just saying.
They drag it on and finally end it.
Yeah, and. So they break up. Well, in the original story Bible, they stay together, and Joe has no attraction towards Maggie, and I wonder how that would have changed things. Just that by itself, because Joe and Maggie were they make my heart sing a little bit, but
Carolyn was just a little too uptight for, I think, Joe's spirit.
She was so desperate just to get out. Yeah. She just wanted to get out.
She had her own demons that she maybe took out on other people, and not deliberately. But, she had her own demons she was fighting, and it interfered with her.
She was, she wanted to be out of the house. She didn't want to be in the prison or the jailhouse. She always referred to it as, something crazy. But yeah, I wonder how things would have changed. Would he have eventually married Carolyn? Would they be having little Haskell Carolyn babies together?
Creating more Collinses.
Yeah, creating more Collinses, because at this point nobody else has baby. It's David. David's it.
Yeah, that's one big thing that. I mean, I think the last babies we saw in the show were Quentin and Jenny's.
Yeah.
Those were the only... Well, okay, I lied, kind of, because, when Jeb... I don't know. I know he was a creature of some type, but, it was still a baby at one point. So that was probably... But, yeah, that wasn't a big part of the storyline, people having babies and getting pregnant and all that. Which is what I like that they didn't put in there, because that's a big piece of soap opera material as well. The drama of who's having whose baby, I like that wasn't part of it. I like that. It wasn't... It gets distracting.
Yeah, it does, because, then you have to worry about, oh, no, I got to get involved with their kids. I got to figure out about their kids, and it's just... Yeah.
Everybody's like one big happy family because they all have kids.
Exactly.
But I like that I like that wasn't in there. and that wasn't part of it.
Yeah, I agree.
There was room for more content.
And the only pregnant person they made was at the tail end, with the whole Catherine and Bromwell thing.
That's right.
And that was the only pregnant person I think they made on the show.
That's right.
And I don't know, that one even at the end, made me go, whoa, that's
It was new.
Yeah.
It was new.
And the totally, again with the soap opera thing, was not her husband's baby, it was her lover's baby, and very soap opera-y.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of these fates were changed, and some of the names were changed. Barnabas Collins stayed the same. That was one that they wrote out and weren't sure about it at first, but then they saw it on a gravestone and were like, Barnabas Collins, yes. So that was one of those
it sounds like a name from the 1700s. Keep it.
It totally does. We know that poor Bill Malloy, we know he's at a different date for his story, but we know that he does die. But in the original story Bible, he doesn't die. He lives. And I really think that Bill Malloy and Elizabeth could have made something of their relationship more than just the business.
If she wasn't so, terrified with her own demons.
Totally.
That could have been a good...
Totally. And Bill Malloy admitted to him, well, you're just the greatest lady I know, and, anyway. But I loved Bill Malloy. I was so sad about his fate not changing. But
yeah, but speaking of the Bible, the Dark Shadows Bible, and the other characters, the other things that changed and didn't make it to the screen story, they were talking about...
Roger Collins?
Yeah. What were they saying about Roger?
Roger Collins. So we weren't supposed to have Roger for a very long time at all. I mean,
right?
Roger made it to the end of the storyline. To the very tail end.
Yes.
Of the series, but we were supposed to lose Roger in the whole Burke Devlin era. And because he's convinced that Vicky is Burke's accomplice and she's only there to get Burke information or whatever. And, they bicker and they fight and it gets a little bit violent. And Roger takes a leap off of Widow's Hill and that's it. We wouldn't have Roger anymore. David would still be left there, probably burning up with Laura by now because Roger wasn't there.
Yep.
And, I just wonder, not having Roger, I think, would have been probably a pretty big change. I think because Roger, there's such good character development with Roger that since they kept him, he went from being this dirtbag who didn't give a crap about his son and actually said the words, my son and I hate each other. Yeah. And it's that, I felt so bad for them because they couldn't just, get along. They always had to be at each other's throats.
Yeah.
And
like, if they did not keep Louis Edmonds on the show, what would have done when they went back into the past?
He played Joshua Collins, and let's see, the next one was I think Edward Collins.
Edward, and
he was so many characters,
But what we would have gotten a new actor for the past. But it's just sweet, and I was talking about this with Barry, my boyfriend, and he was saying there's no other show that reuses the characters like Dark Shadows did for different time periods, but the only one that we could come up with from today's shows on TV is probably American Horror Story. They reuse their characters for the different stories they're doing. Like it's a different story each season on American Horror Story, and they reuse the same characters for the different stories.
I didn't pick up on that. I've only seen like one season, or a couple seasons.
It's the same actors for all the different tales they're telling for each different season.
I didn't realize that. That's pretty cool.
So, of today's shows, that's about the only one I could think of that reuses their characters and their actors like Dark Shadows did. And it works. And I love it.
And Dan Curtis knew it would work. They were like, oh, you can't do that. They won't follow. And it's like, oh, no, we'll get there. They'll get it. They'll follow us.
Catherine Lee Scott was talking about that in one of her interviews. And she was like, and they were like, well, we're going to need to hire more actors. They're like, no, the audience will get it. They'll follow.
Yeah, they'll follow.
They'll follow along. And of course.
And they did. Yes. And it wasn't hard to do. You're like, oh, okay, got it. And
It's totally believable.
Yeah,
they're playing their ancestors.
And it plays into Vicky's confusion about being in the past.
Exactly.
It's like, why doesn't anyone know me?
Yes.
You know?
Yes. So it totally works.
She just shows up outside the old house, and she's like, well, that's the old house. Why does it look so nice? Because, you know, the old house is totally run down, you know, and even Jonathan Frid commented on it in a radio interview. He was like, the old house came about because Dan Curtis was going on these morning walks before the sun was just right and they could get the photos, you know, of the houses and whatnot. And he stumbles on this old colonial mansion, and it's run down and the shutters are flapping, you know, and, you know, he grabs his camera guys real quick and he's like, get a shot of this house. This is what we're going to use for the old house. And it was a perfect fit. I mean, that old house was great. And, you know, they took the day shots for the night so it looked nicer, you know, but those ominous pillars just standing up there in the moonlight, you're like, holy, something crappy's going on in there, you know, but...
I always wanted to live there.
Me too.
Looking at that house as a kid.
Me too.
Like, I'm going to live there someday.
I mean, Collinwood was great, but the old house was where I wanted to live.
Yes.
I mean, Collinwood was great. It was a mansion on the hill. It had an east wing and a west wing and, you know, a terrace. But the one place, you know, of all the roofs on Collinwood Estate, I wanted to live at the old house.
Ghosts and all.
Yes.
I wanted to live
just
at the old house.
Just the stories that house saw.
Yes. Oh,
and
gosh, it was amazing.
But yeah, that's how the old house came about. And the other one I want to mention, because it's a little bit humorous for me, the fate that had changed was actually Jason McGuire's fate.
Okay.
And, you know, we all know that he gives Liz, you know, a run for her money and is blackmailing her out of so much money and so much crap, you know, and so bad that Liz wants to kill herself than marry this guy.
Right.
You know, and...
Right. Yeah, and to not let out this secret.
I mean, he drove her to just blurt the whole thing out in front of a judge, you know?
Yeah.
And...
Not just not caring anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, and so his fate, you know, we know that he went to the old house, wrong place, wrong time, saw Barnabas, and got choked to death. Boom. Exactly. And, you know, we all know that he dies, and no more Jason McGuire, right. Sayonara. But in the original story Bible, he lives. You know, he doesn't. Wow. Barnabas doesn't get him. You know, he gets run out of Collinwood, and we never hear from him again. That's how Jason McGuire would have ended. But while I don't condone killing people,
but with his track record, how
wrong.
Believable is that he'd actually stay away?
Exactly. That's my point. Exactly. You know, killing people's wrong, so I don't condone that. However, if Jason McGuire had been allowed to just leave, who's to say that he wouldn't come back and start his bullcrap all over again? Exactly. I mean, later on down the line, we get Paul Stoddard, who is an enigma all by himself. Yeah. I mean, they might have met up and come back together, and then poor Liz, you know? Yeah. But
I wish they wouldn't have taken so long to bring Paul Stoddard back. Yeah. Where I'm at in my binge in Dark Shadows right now, Paul has just come back into town. Oh. And him and Carolyn have met up and they know each other, and Liz just found out. But I wish they wouldn't have waited so long to bring Paul back in because of his side of the story. And it was nothing like they knew for the past 18, 20 years. Like, it was totally different. Like, and Jason was that monkey in the middle. Yeah. Telling each side a different story. Yep. For his benefit. Yep. You're absolutely right. And it's so sad because, you know, they bring Paul on, he tells his side of the story, Carolyn gets in with her dad, she loves him, and then they take him. Yeah. Yeah. The Leviathans take him. Yeah.
That was so short-lived.
I wish they would have brought him in sooner.
Me too, because that reunion with him and Carolyn, I feel, was so genuine and
long overdue and for her character.
Yeah,
and
when she found out that her mother had quote unquote killed her father. Yeah, you know, when she found out that Liz was the one who did it. Yeah, and she runs off, and they don't see her for like a day. Yeah, and by the time she gets back, they find out, you know, Paul Stoddard is actually alive, and she doesn't go looking for him. She's just like, oh, that's wonderful that he's not dead. Okay, next scenario. It's like,
yeah, they just cut you off.
Like, now we have a great relationship with our dad, so I don't know how Carolyn felt with all that, But I kind of want to believe that if I were in the same scenario and my dad was still alive, I'd want to find him.
Yeah.
You know, and being a Collins, you got all these resources and all this money, and she probably could have easily tracked him down, and she didn't, you know, which says about her loyalty to her mother.
Yeah.
You know, as much as they fought, Liz and Carolyn truly did love each other. Mm-hmm. They were not like David and Roger. They were like, I hate you. Well, I hate you too. No, they clashed, but what mother and daughter doesn't. But Liz just wanted the best for Carolyn.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't want Carolyn to be stuck in the madhouse because, you know, Liz was already stuck there because she was waiting on Paul, you know?
Yeah.
Or we thought, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and he tells Carolyn when he meets back up with him, well, I haven't seen Jason McGuire since that night, you know?
Right.
So Jason took off with Liz's money that night and didn't even see Paul.
Yeah.
You know, he just ran off and did his thing. And he only came back because he was broke and he knew Liz Stoddard had money and was, quote unquote, hiding a body in the basement.
Right.
So,
and when Paul comes in, he's like, yeah, I remember that night. I remember your mom hitting me over the head. And he's like, and then I remember Jason coming in and he told me that Liz sent me in to finish the job, to kill you. So I'm giving you a chance to run off and get out of here. So, I mean...
Absolutely. I mean, Jason was a world-class manipulator.
Yes. And, again, not condoning killing, but...
I feel like this was the best thing that could have happened.
That was the best scenario for Jason McGuire's character.
I absolutely agree. And that gave us a chance to really know Paul without Jason, because up until this point, that's all we know about Paul, is that he was friends with Jason and married to Liz. You know?
I don't think I mean, yeah, it would have created a lot of drama for the show and a lot of viewing. Yeah. But I don't think you could have brought Paul back with Jason in the picture still. Yeah, yeah. But yeah. But in the end, I'm glad they gave us some closure on the Paul Stoddard saga and story. They did. I'm really glad that they at least gave us that.
There was a very, very valuable piece of Paul Stoddard that I have just recently discovered. Okay. Reading this original story Bible, you know, because there's pieces of it on Dark Shadows Wiki. So I was reading in the Bible and I came across something that I nearly peed my pants over. Mm-hmm. There is Victoria's whole thing. Her whole thing is, who am I? Who are my parents? What am I supposed to be? You know, what is my lineage? Yeah. Where did I come from? Yeah. Because
that's her whole story.
That's her whole story. That's her whole reason for even taking this job.
Her whole story is, I have no story.
Yes.
What is my life?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so she shows up at this house and she's going to work. That's what she's doing. That's why she's there. Mm-hmm. But she's also there to find out what this family knows about her past. Mm-hmm. And that story, we don't get the end of it. It just kind of fizzles off. Yeah. And I learned that it's because of the failing ratings. They wanted to bring in that supernatural thing and get back on the charts. Right. You know? And so because of Laura, I'm not mad about Laura. I love the Laura Collins story, but I wish we could have finished Vicky's story.
Definitely.
And because we find out, this whole time they've got us thinking, I bet Liz is her mother. Liz has got to be her mother. Yeah. And Liz, maybe had a baby with one of these guys that just adore her. She's up in the house. If they come by, there's many rooms that they can use, Well,
and Liz was sending her all this money. Yeah. All this time.
Well, she finds out that she's been getting all this money. Like
monthly payments.
Yeah, monthly payments to the care of Victoria Winters. No return address, no nothing. Yeah. And in the original story Bible, she finds this letter and written in Paul Stoddard's hand, this letter that Paul had written Elizabeth when they were in love. And it was Paul's handwriting, and she compared it against the note that she got that was attached to her basket when they dropped her off. Right. Her name is Victoria. I cannot take care of her. And it was the same handwriting as Paul Stoddard's. So now she's got evidence. She was like, okay, are you guys my parents or what? Mm-hmm. And Liz is like, I'm not your mom, but Paul's your dad. And
Wow.
Yeah. Paul's your dad. I'm not your mom, but Paul's your dad.
But then the mom, that comes in with the painting Vicky finds with Sam Evans.
Yeah, Liz claims she knows. I think Liz is a liar. I love her, but I think she's a liar.
She knows everything.
Because
it's just one of her many secrets.
Because we know that, you know, she finds this picture of I'm so sorry, the name is escaping me. She finds the picture of Betty Hanscom. See, I knew it'd come to me.
Yes.
Came to both of us at the same time. P.S. That was kind of cool. It's too bad this isn't a video podcast. This would be entertaining. But
one day, guys.
One day we will do a live show with the video and everything.
Betty Hanscom.
Yes, Betty Hanscom. That's what she finds this picture of Betty Hanscom at Sam Evans' place. You know, Sam Evans is Maggie Evans' father.
By this time, her and Maggie are pretty good friends.
Yeah, invited her over for dinner.
Yeah.
You know, and she was like, "Can I look through some of your dad's paintings?" Her dad's an artist.
Yeah.
And, you know, she finds this picture of Betty Hanscom. I can't even say that word. Hanscom. And it looks just like her. You know, looks exactly like her. Eventually, she brings this thing home, and Liz is like, well, Vicky, I don't think it looks anything like you. Looks nothing like you.
Yeah.
And then Carolyn walks in. She goes, Vicky, when did you have your picture done?
Uh-huh.
You know, and she turns around and looks at Liz like, you know. So she finds this picture, and Liz claims, she swears up and down, I don't know who your mom is.
Yeah.
I don't know who she is.
Yeah.
She's like, I've been taking care of you all this time. I gave you the job because you're Paul's daughter, and I feel guilty about killing him.
Yeah.
And...
yeah.
But we find out that somebody with the name of Hanscom used to work for the Collinses.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody seems to remember anything about him or her.
Yeah.
And they say it's a him, and maybe Betty was his daughter or his niece. We don't know. We don't find out. And even the original story Bible doesn't have any more information on Betty Hanscom, you know? And so...
But putting the pieces together, what we got from this show, and then the information from the Bible here, I mean, you can...
It's Paul Stoddard and Betty Hanscom.
And I just wish they would have kept that. They totally could have fit that in real quick.
I mean, we're playing detective here right now.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure we're not the only ones who have been trying to figure this out.
Yeah, so if you didn't know that, there is your Dark Shadows trivia for the night.
There we go.
I had no idea. In all the years I've been watching Dark Shadows, I never got my hands on any pieces of this Bible before, but thank you, technology, here we are. Yeah. And I just found out that Paul Stoddard is Vicky's dad. And
so her and Carolyn, they're half sisters.
They're half sisters.
No wonder, I mean,
and they're best friends.
They butted heads on things, but, they were as close as sisters.
Right.
I mean, and there you go.
Exactly. And I think, eventually we just got used to Vicky. We loved her. She became part of the house. She became one of the family.
Was, like, as staple as Barnabas is.
Yeah, she was wonderful. And we loved her.
And they filled her spot pretty well when she was gone, but man, there was always a missing piece without Vicky.
My heart is always full when I get to see Vicky Winters and Barnabas Collins in the same room. There just is. I mean, Vicky had so many. It's not really so many. She had a few loves along the way, and each one was sad when she lost it. Each one, know.
Yeah.
But eventually we just didn't care where Vicky came from because we loved her.
Yeah, she was a part of the family.
She was a part of the family. She was, and Winters wasn't even her last name. That's what they called her because that's what time of season she showed up at the orphanage.
Right, like Jon Snow.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like from the north.
Exactly. But, so I think Liz has got. She could probably fill a wing of Collinwood with her secrets. Absolutely. I think she really could.
Absolutely.
And.
I feel also like with her and Barnabas, like with Barnabas, like Vicky was his first true love.
I agree.
After Josette.
I agree. And I think
his first genuine true love.
I think the last
it
time
had nothing to do about being a vampire,
not making her
in, and he didn't want to change a thing about Vicky. He didn't want to make her what he. I mean, yes, he. In the beginning, yes, that was his plan because he was just trying to rebound from Maggie not working, making her Josette.
Yeah,
he was just trying to rebound off that. But then he really fell in love with Vicky.
He really did.
He didn't want to change a thing about her, and he wanted to change himself for her.
Exactly. And I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It is my opinion. This is my opinion. I believe with all of my heart that Barnabas Collins loved Vicky more than he loved Josette.
I could agree with you there.
Like, he loved Josette deeply, but there was something about Vicky that he just...
Yeah.
He was tender with her. With Josette, it was all about the passion and, oh, I love you and I can't wait to be married.
Yes, but on Vicky, a different level.
On a different
level, they connected.
Yeah, it was
like spiritually, mentally.
It was like finding your soulmate.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
They appreciated, each other for exactly what they were. Yeah. Because Barnabas stopped trying to make her Josette because he was already in love with Vicky. Yeah. That was profound to me. Profound. And I kind of wish we could have seen where that would have gone because Barnabas was so lonely, so many failed relationships.
Well, and then, they're finally going to run off together, and they get into the accident, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They hit a guy on the road because Vicky is pretty sure she just saw Peter Bradford.
That's right.
And
yes. Yeah.
Crashes her car.
And that's where it all ends. But, in the end, Vicky finds her place in the world.
She does. And
she does.
She really does. And but I loved her storyline and, even my husband who, was adopted he wanted to know about where he came from, yeah. And I think that's just an orphan's thing, it's
natural. I mean, it's
when
natural.
You don't know who your real parents are, if I didn't know, I'd probably be turning the world upside down trying to find them, and it's just a classic story of an orphan who wants to know where she came from.
Right. And it's a great start to her
life.
Second saga, I will say, of Dark Shadows, because, pre-Barnabas is a whole saga itself.
Yeah.
And then that's a great start to the next saga of Dark Shadows.
Yeah, I agree.
This orphan to lead it off, into this mysterious dark world.
Yeah.
To find herself.
And find herself at such a place where she's going to get an experience like she never dreamed.
Yeah.
Okay, so the one thing I want to comment on, because it kind of leads into that, is when she's sitting at the bar with Maggie in the hotel diner.
Yeah.
And she's having her dinner because she's waiting on this guy with a flat tire. Mm-hmm. And Maggie is like your average run-of-the-mill town gossip.
Yeah.
And she... how's your steak, honey? Would you like a piece of pie?
She's like your local bartender.
Yeah, she's like your local bartender.
She serves you food and booze,
Right, exactly. And she's telling her, she was like, you should stay the night and then decide in the morning, And,
sleep on it.
And she was like, no, I gotta do this. And we all know Vicky had her reasons. And and Maggie was like, well, I could tell you stories about that house that would rock you from here all the way back to the railroad station. Mm-hmm. And Vicky's like, no, thank you. I still want to take it.
I'll make my own opinions.
Yeah. And so that whole first episode, someone is trying to talk that girl out of going to Collinwood.
Yes.
Something is going on in this dusty old house on top of the cliff, and everybody in town knows it. Mm-hmm. And everybody is terrified of what's going on up in that house. And Maggie knew it too. And she was like, my favorite line of like that first episode was move in there, but take a good look in that mirror, because in 2 months that pretty little head of yours is going to be one glorious shade of gray. One of my favorite lines. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And Vicky, she kind of looks in the mirror and brushes her hair back, like Maggie kind of got in her head. And, as she's leaving, she's like, you were just kidding, right? And Maggie goes, sure, honey. Sure I was, and...
But I do like how they calmed Maggie down a little,
Yeah.
After, Barnabas got a hold of her, she didn't really work much anymore. And she just kind of stayed home and took care of her dad. And,
yeah.
And I like that.
I did too. Like, I didn't like her to be... Like, I loved her as they portrayed her in the beginning. I did love that about her, but I love that they gave her more character. Yeah. I said,
she
character
never she never lost her toughness.
Yeah, she was always spunky and sassy.
Yeah, and tough, and she spoke up. You know, don't touch me.
Exactly.
But
and for all that Maggie went through.
Yeah.
I have this appreciation. I know Maggie is the beautiful one in the story. She's the one that looks like Josette, but she's not a damsel in distress. She is a tough bird.
Yeah, yes. And when going through that whole crap with Joe and Angelique, when Angelica had a hold of him,
that was the end of them. That broke my heart.
She wasn't even a damsel then. Like, she's like, I love you, Joe, but I can't do this,
Yeah, she's like they gave away your job at the shipyard, and goodbye, Joe. And that's what she says. You know?
I've done everything I can. I'm out.
It was another relationship that Angelique ruined. Thank you very much, Angelique. But Angelique is a story all by herself, and we will definitely get to Angelique.
Yeah, we have so much more to go on.
There's
so much more to talk
many
about.
stories. I'm so excited to do this. This has been a dream of ours for some time, and I'm so glad that it's finally coming to fruition.
Here.
It's finally here. And so we will leave you with that tonight. Again, we would love to hear from you if you send us an email at betweentheshadows2021@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook at Between the Shadows. We're all about fan comments, so please send us whatever you think, your comments. If you happen to have any questions, we will be very happy to...
If you have a specific topic, let us know.
Absolutely. We would love to hear from you. But we will leave you with that tonight, and we just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you guys so much.
And we will talk to you next time. Remember to keep it between us and the shadows. Good night.
Good night. One night, I had a dream. It was a girl on a train, and she was riding along a rocky coastline. I can remember the waves smashing on the rocks. And in the dream, I knew that somehow she was being hired as a governess to work in this big house. The train drops her off at this little one-horse station. It's nighttime. And she steps out onto the empty platform, and the train pulls away into the darkness and the mist. And she's standing there all alone. And I woke up.